Welcome back to another Explainer. Today we're unpacking some source material that, quite honestly, just stopped me dead in my tracks. It's this incredibly deep, contemplative look at finding spiritual comfort and completely reframing our pasts. If you've ever felt like your journey is just this endless string of wrong turns, or you're constantly stuck in a waiting room, what we're looking at today is going to be a massive paradigm shift for you. So, let's jump right in. The text kicks off with this really striking revelation. It says, "A path has opened in front of you that did not exist last week." Think about that for a second. It's inviting you to recognize that you are standing on a brand new threshold right this very minute. This isn't necessarily the road you carefully mapped out 5 years ago, or even the detour you just sort of reluctantly accepted. The source suggests that absolutely every uncelebrated mile you've walked, every single time you felt totally frozen at a crossroads, was actually paving the exact ground you're stepping onto today. That takes us straight into the hidden path beneath and why your journey hasn't been a delay. Because to actually grasp this newly opened path, we've got to completely overhaul how we view everything that brought us to this exact second.
It's almost like we've all been operating on a really glitchy internal GPS. Our natural, anxious human tendency is to look back and just see a highlight reel of delays and wrong turns, right? We're always measuring our progress by how far along we think we should be. But the text contrasts this with a divine view, which looks at that exact same timeline and sees pure preparation. Those so-called wrong turns, they were totally necessary. Instead of hyper-focusing on missed progress, this higher perspective measures how much you were actually being carried when you couldn't walk yourself. It's a complete invitation to borrow a totally different set of eyes. The source uses this brilliant architectural metaphor to explain it. Your life's path isn't just some fragile line drawn on a piece of paper. It's a deeply layered foundation. Way down at the bottom, beneath the everyday soil of your story, there's a stone of faithfulness. And beneath that, a solid bedrock of covenant, meaning your next mile isn't just relying on your own exhausting willpower. You're being held up by this massive, unseen architecture that was put there long before you even knew you needed it. Let's keep that in mind as we move into reframing your past detours and starting to see your journey as a teacher rather than a tribunal. I gotta say, this part hit hard. The text essentially asks us to step out of our own courtroom. We are so quick to treat our lives like a tribunal. Every mistake, every weird detour, every stumble becomes harsh evidence that we're failing. We literally pace the floors of our own guilt. But what happens if we decide our journey is a teacher? Suddenly, a closed door isn't a rejection anymore, it's a rescue. A blocked route was just the universe's way of redirecting you to the path that was actually built for you. When your journey is your teacher, every painful stretch holds a lesson you absolutely wouldn't trade. And that brings us right to the core concept of this whole text, contemplation. Now, contemplation isn't about coming up with some frantic 5-year strategy or anxiously tracking how many miles you have left. It's a slow, patient seeing. It's not about hacking away at the mountain in front of you. It's about changing the eyes of the person looking at the mountain. It's realizing that the big blessing you've been waiting for, it's actually the harvest of the path you've already survived. To put that into perspective, imagine looking back at the footprints you've left over the different phases of your life. First, you've got those really deep steps from the years you were carrying way too much. Then, maybe there are some uneven steps where grief or heartbreak completely threw off your balance. After that, steps that are barely visible at all because you were just running on sheer exhaustion. But look at this final phase. The steps are shared. There's another set right beside yours. The text is giving you this massive reassurance that you've made it through the heaviest burdens and you are definitively no longer walking alone.
So, equipped with that mindset, we can look at the contemplative posture and start recognizing your quiet victories. We're talking about the stuff nobody is ever going to throw a party for. The invisible milestones. Forgiving someone entirely in your own heart without ever getting an apology. Keeping your word when absolutely no one was watching to hold you accountable. Biting your tongue and choosing silence instead of dropping a really cutting remark. Getting back up after you fell on your face in private. The source points out that these specific, unseen moments of integrity, those are the actual building blocks. They are the exact threads weaving together the blessing that's coming. Literally nothing you've done in the dark was wasted. Let's actually just pause on this one for a second. The text uses this incredibly powerful phrase, "I am blessing your life, and you can begin to see it." It asks you to use this not just as a nice thought, but as a real mantra, a literal turning of your heart to face the direction where the good stuff has been all along. And look, I know a part of you probably wants to argue with it or demand hard evidence, but for just a minute, Tell that defensive part of your brain to take a seat and just let these words travel through you.
Now, how do we practically live this out? That's what this next section covers: earning versus receiving, and the physical posture of trust.
This is a massive behavioral shift. We have to move from an exhausting earning mindset to a peaceful receiving posture. Earning is all about gripping your hands tight, leaning forward anxiously, constantly keeping score of what you're putting in versus what you're getting out. It's draining, and honestly, you've been doing it long enough. Receiving is so much simpler. It's just an open hand resting in your lap. A clenched fist can only hold whatever it manages to squeeze out of itself, right? But an open hand is ready to actually catch the peace, the new ideas, and the relationships that are already being handed to it.
Of course, fear is going to try to ruin this. Fear loves standing at the bottom of the trail and demanding you figure out how you're going to survive the summit before you've even tied your shoes. It wants you to take on the entire journey at once. But the source is so clear on this. Life is literally only handed to us in units of one. One single morning, one footstep, one present moment. You can't walk a tomorrow that hasn't been built yet. All you're going to do is burn yourself out pacing through imaginary scenarios in your bedroom at 3 a.m. Which leads us perfectly into taking the next step and letting your inner journey lead your outer circumstances. I absolutely love this pattern from the text. It says the inner journey always changes before the outer circumstances do. Think about how true that is. You usually feel a quiet settling in your chest before the stressful financial situation actually resolves. You get a new sense of mental clarity before the physical door swings open in front of you. They're connected by an invisible wire. So if the chaotic noise in your head is finally starting to quiet down, that's your absolute best proof that the visible path is already shifting. The outer world is just taking a second to catch up. If you're still feeling hesitant about the road ahead, ask yourself this. What fundamentally changes when a journey belongs to two people instead of just one? Well, for starters, pacing becomes way more manageable because the weight is shared. And honestly, the best part? Silence between footsteps isn't this awkward, lonely void anymore. It just becomes true companionship. You don't have to panic at every blind corner because the presence walking next to you already scouted it out. So, what do we do right now? Your only job today is to return to the single step right in front of your feet. Quit trying to fund tomorrow's problems with today's energy. What is your step 1? Maybe it's just making one phone call or whispering one quiet prayer. Step 2, do one incredibly simple act of kindness for yourself. Step 3 could be finally sending that text to get closure on something you've been avoiding. And step 4, just put your foot down and let the invisible giver worry about where the path actually leads. The strength arrives with the step, not before it. We're going to wrap up the explainer with this thought, and it's really the whole point of our source material today. The text insists that your blessing isn't stuck in transit. It's already here. The journey you've been on is the blessing, and it's steering you right where you need to be. So here's the question I want to leave you with. Will you let your hand fall open, stop gripping the past so tightly, and just let your eyes catch up to the incredible path that's already rising up to meet you? Take a deep breath, let that sit with you for a while, and I'll catch you in the next one.